Can a nation have a soul? If one could, it certainly wouldn't be America. How could a place that seems plastic in every way ever have any kind of common thread that runs through it? Certainly, a place with so many disparate ideas and people and experiences could never have anything in common, or could it? Happy Independence Day. Hopefully you're having a good weekend. Whether you really celebrate it or not, it should be more than just a holiday. It's a chance to reevaluate ourselves, to look within and think of what living here means to us. More than just anger at the past wars and death, and more than just blind obedience and fealty to the abstract concept of a nation, and certainly more than just a chance to celebrate the nation by blowing up a small piece of it. This ought to be a chance to think, to ponder what a nation state, our nation state, means in modern times. It's not as simple as what people on the left and the right think it is. A nation is a complex living being, and ours especially. At this time, I find myself wondering, do we have a soul? And if so, what would that soul be? A soul within a person is hard to define, and because we cannot quantify it, we simply dismiss it. Yet, when we dismiss things without knowledge, we block up any room for us to ever know for sure. In this case, let's keep it simple. A soul is something deep within us, not religious or spiritual, but an energy that drives us. We may not know what it is, but we know what feeds it.
But it's good for you.
It's good for you. That thing is a heart attack on a bun.
No, Squidward, I meant good for your soul.
Oh, please. I have no soul.
And even Squidward here has a soul, as evidenced by his overdosing on Krabby Patties. In the case of a nation's soul, we must wonder, what drives our nation? What feeds it? What keeps our populace from joining the members of January 6th? Regardless of what some in other countries may think, we're not all mindless shopping zombies, working hard and absorbing movies and TV to forget about the terrible nature of reality. As I see it, the soul of the nation is wrapped up in so many facets of our culture, but you can boil it down to one statement. America is a place where you can do what you want as long as you are willing to face the consequences of those actions. And truly, that is freedom. That singular statement is what brings people here, what keeps them here, and what makes the nation run. It's what defines the soul of America, the very essence of a nation that is not defined by any specific group, religion, culture, or history. America's enemies often claim that the US is a purely materialist nation, driven only by capitalism. But truly, the desire for freedom, the ability to make choices without being constrained by any sort of history, class, ritual, or tradition, is what defines America. Even in modern times, with new dangers and new peoples living in America, that freedom still fills the being of every American. The desire to live as we see fit is the spiritual truth that unites us as a nation. But what of capitalism? And all the other things connected to that statement.
Hold on there, Jethro.
That's right, listen to the man. Hold on tight and we will get to all of it in a minute. But first, I want to take a quick moment to ask that if you like this kind of more philosophical video without a direct media tie-in, please let me know in the comments. And of course, please subscribe. More subscribers means more resources, which means better videos and more of them. Now, let's get back to futurism. So let's backtrack a little bit. America is not always well liked in the international world, and US imperialism plays a part in that. And Independence Day is a lot like a birthday, and any self-aware person will look at themselves on that day. Part of looking within is wondering, if you have enemies, why that is. Obviously, our aggression during the post-World War II era hasn't earned us many friends, but then other places that don't love us, like sections of the Middle East or China or Russia, they're not exactly saints, so why the hate from them? Well, they will say it's because we act like we're perfect, even if we're not, but a lot of them behave that way as well. No, that's not the real complaint. The enemies of America often have two complaints, and on the surface they are not wrong. They believe that ours is a society that has supposedly replaced all spirituality with materialism and rational thought, and they don't like that. Old world societies, such as the Middle East or Russia, are traditional places. They are beautiful cultures that have been pushed to the brink by the modern world, and their old school values and their faith offer them comfort in the face of modernity. I would argue that places like Russia and sections of the Middle East are places that are seeking comfort in the familiar. It doesn't make it right, but they feel they have more of a soul than the USA. It's not about money or economic things. It's about tradition and values, faith in something higher than the material world. They see American liberal values as a threat to that, and US global imperialism isn't just visible in the form of military intervention. While Americans see their values as a spectrum from conservative to progressive to the old world, there is no such nuance. They just see a loss of their histories and culture to the modern capitalist world, and even more so, the danger of anarchy and chaos that comes with conflicting ideas. The rest of the world has known war and strife in a way that the US will never know. When anthropologists, those who study human culture, speak to members of extremist organizations abroad, these members often talk about the might of their spiritual power. They speak about how they may only be one person, but they have a spirituality and faith that gives them strength beyond themselves. In the same way, the advisors that inform Putin's decision-making talk about how the material world is plastic, and so America, focusing only on materialism, is devoid of spiritual practice. There's a whole book discussing Putin's spiritual ideas around Russia and his logic in the Ukraine invasion. I've linked it below if you're interested. And it makes a lot of sense if you look at the world from a spiritual perspective. But that perspective misses America's truth entirely. It is easy to belittle the states and claim that everything is large, plastic, and fake, but to do so denies the reality of the world Americans live in. The continents of the Americas didn't get farming as soon as Europe and the Old World. The harsh climate here made it so difficult to transport food from north to south. Even today, hurricanes, tornadoes, and other weather events make it a hard country to live in. This informs the difficulties of the nation, creating a deep reverence for the choices that are made. There is a constant battle between various groups about how much freedom is acceptable, and if it will be dangerous to the collective or the individual. That very concept of freedom is the core of America's spiritual soul, even if no one understands that. So let's go deeper. How do we define America's soul? We may know it in this conversation, but from an outside lens, no one is really sure. The one thing that most people outside of the US are positive of is that if any place has a soul, it's not America. Everything is huge here, and bigger is always better. Some people in America even like that interpretation of America. The ideals, values, principles, and government of America are supposedly purely secular, based on the Greeks and on the Iroquois Confederacy, rooted in rationalism and logic, and often that can feel empty. People in America aren't encouraged to seek spirituality or deeper meaning. It's all about making money, enjoying life, and keeping it simple. Your freedom should be enough. And the general culture up until now has been all about things being bigger, better, brighter, and often gaudier in the process. The mall and the skyscraper, no longer a purely American phenomenon, but some of the starkest structures in the country are ubiquitous, and signs of the logical materialism that dominates the land. They are fun up to a point, but when people want more, there isn't much. Or is there? I would argue that in this materialism, there is something deeper. It is a result of harsh circumstances, given that most Americans came here from difficult circumstances, which has created a deep longing for prosperity. Those who choose to live in America are usually fleeing difficult situations, ranging from simple economic struggles to actual persecution. People outside of the US miss that. People who claim that America has no spirituality or soul miss that fact. It's not about money. There's so much more happening in America that even Americans often miss. The tension between the individual and the collective, between making your own choices and living with the consequences of them. There may not be any traditions or structures. There is no faith in any one specific deity or even God, as most Abrahamic religions understand it. But there is a faith in oneself. There's a faith in the place of America itself. We're not defined by the belief in something abstract, like an invisible God or past traditions. Because to be able to do anything that you want, your right to do so must be protected. It creates this tension, this negotiation of what freedom means. So the very core of the nation is always being negotiated. In that way, America's soul is thoroughly modern. It lies in the fact that this is a place where everyone is 100% responsible for themselves, but if they don't learn to work together, they will die. It's the tension between the individual and the collective, and common sense shows us how to pick out which conversations are worth having and which aren't. It's a modern soul, not an ancient one. It's still growing, flexible, adaptable, and never set in stone. This evolving soul, this constant attempt to define freedom, is what underpins every legislative discussion. For some people, it's about doing anything and everything without judgment. For others, it's about doing anything and everything without fear. It's one reason why abortion is a discussion. But think of it this way. With abortion legislation in the 40s, we might not have Cher, because according to a weird biography I once saw on cable, her mother was a single mom, and she considered not having her, but opted out because it didn't feel right. Or, if we didn't have abortion available in the 70s, we wouldn't have Stevie Nicks. According to her, she got pregnant around the time Fleetwood Mac was taking off, and with a kid, she never would have been able to do everything that she did. These two stories show us what freedom means to different people. So where does capitalism fit into this? Because it does have its place. It's not about buying plastic nonsense. It's about creating a marketplace of all that we can be. When people are given that freedom, as it has grown over the years to include more and more people, more and more things that we can do come into the marketplace. As much as America offers a marketplace of goods, it also offers a marketplace of ideas. A dress isn't just a dress. It's an idea of who we can be when we put it on. The same goes for a variety of objects. It's about creating a variety of identities, a chance for reinvention, to do anything and everything one desires, which is freedom. And it's not just about the freedom of the individual, but of the collective. It takes time and process. How do we stay together while maintaining rights for the individual? Who are we as people without one unified race, religion, or background? We are free to do what we want, to buy what we want, to look how we want, to have a family or community or beliefs. We are free to do what we feel, no matter how foolish. We are also free to adhere to our culture, religion, or community as we wish. We are free to simply be as we wish, not despite being consumers, but because we are. Our faith in our system, the freedom it affords us, especially those who came from persecuted places, is what binds us together. But make no mistake, it is a constant negotiation. America discusses everything, all of our hot-button topics, to the point of exhaustion. But that's okay, because movements come along and put new ideas into the lexicon. How much should businesses be regulated? Who belongs here? What role will the government play in technology? We, fingers crossed, avoid heading into a dystopia because we can have conversations about everything and make choices as a result. That's what freedom is. It's choosing things, everything. And to give it away is nonsense, because those who have lived without it will tell you that these freedoms give life meaning, even if they come with consequences. But truly, that is life. And that's okay, because what else would we do here? It creates a world where we can do what we want, but also for people to dream of even more. People in the past, maybe not so much now, felt safe to create. So you have innovation, like the work that Steve Jobs did. An adopted child from a difficult background, he was safe in America to create something that no one had ever dreamed of. And that freedom has allowed so many brilliant artistic and cultural movements to happen. America has so much unique culture and interesting things in its history of that limitless freedom that comes from not having to observe limits by class, race, or tradition. The pursuit of individual freedoms has created so much amazing art, music, literature, and more. Things that are genuinely unique and creative. We, as Americans facing our shadow right now, tend to forget that. Creatives flourish when there is safety to express oneself and when capitalism is held to account. It's easy to dismiss it and say that capitalism doesn't breed innovation, but it did for a long time. It wasn't just luck. This soul lives in the heart of Americans whether they realize it or not. It's not idealistic, frankly, it's quite painful, because it's so new. But like any new system of belief and ideas, it needs time to grow. By seeing the deep spiritual nature of American culture, perhaps the world can see us differently. Perhaps we can see ourselves differently. It is often unacknowledged as the nation is depicted through the secular world of government and philosophy, but there is more that lies beneath the surface, and we all have more in common with one another than anyone would like to admit. There is a danger to this freedom, an openness that can leave us vulnerable to bad actors, but we accept it anyway. Americans of all varieties want that same freedom, but the world is a different place, with new dangers. Making choices and experiencing the consequences is not quite the same thing anymore. So some security, some safety nets would allow us to experience that same way of being, but in a modern context. Limiting scammers from across the globe, shutting down the dangers of social media, or even just regulating business would allow the freedoms that really matter to flow more freely. But that tension again is what defines America, between safety and freedom, between soaring high and hitting the sun. It's okay though, because it's necessary. America needs work, but because we are who we are, we will always be a work in progress. And truly, every human being could say that, because through the good and the bad, we are all works in progress, just like our nation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that in this video, as well as in my past ones, I don't come off as a patriot. Even as a child, I loathed singing patriotic songs, regardless of the country. But it feels important right now to contextualize things. There's so much hate in the world for literally everything. And while things are not perfect here in the States, we still have something worth holding on to. If you like politics, you can check out my video on Madam Secretary. It's a really interesting show about how politics in America should run rather than how it does. If you enjoyed this video and you want to know more about American politics, then check out my video on Empathy Across the Aisles, which explains partisanship through Yellowstone and the Batman. It's a weird one, but it'll definitely make your weekend more interesting. Happy 4th, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!